Your backing tracks suck. Now, I've said that to a lot of students over the years in an attempt to cajole them into finding better tracks to practice with. And now they have no excuse, and in this video, I'll show you why. If you're new here, my name is Chase Sanborn and I'm a jazz trumpet player based in Toronto. A short time ago, I heard a few tracks coming from a play-along app called QUARTET. Well, they sounded better than anything I've ever heard coming from an app, so I reached out to the company to express my interest in reviewing it. They haven't paid me for this review, and there are no affiliate links. These are my honest and frank impressions, and those of my students who I enlisted as testers. To begin with a little bit of history, jazz play-along recordings have been around for at least as long as I've been playing the trumpet, which is to say, nearly 60 years. For decades, Jamie Aebersold was virtually the only game in town for jazz improvisers. The first Aebersold play-along was released in 1967, and to date there are 133 volumes. Initially, the Aebersold tracks were on vinyl LPs, and I bought a lot of those. Eventually, the tracks were on CDs, and now they're available as downloads. On the Aebersold website, you can order any of the volumes individually at a cost ranging from about $11 to $20, or you can order the complete set of books and downloads for $2,100. Now, I've always held out the Jamie Aebersold recordings as some of the best play-along tracks that you can get. Every track is recorded by real musicians, and some of the rhythm sections are among the very best in the business. I mean, how else are you going to get the chance to play with the likes of Kenny Barron or Ron Carter? With the evolution of digital music technology came the means to create backing tracks in which the user can manipulate the key and the tempo and other variables. Band in a Box launched in 1990 with synthesized tracks generated from MIDI. In 2007, they started using samples of real musicians to create tracks that sounded more lifelike and yet still could be manipulated. I've never used Band in a Box, but it's said to have somewhat of a steep learning curve, and it's relatively expensive, with various configurations currently priced from about $100 to over $600. The app that became known as iReal Pro launched in 2010. It's cheap, and it's easy to use, and it's become a ubiquitous resource for jazz students and teachers. Now, despite that, I've never used it, and I'll explain why. iReal Pro has a lot of great features. You can download tracks from a large library or create your own. You have the ability to change the key or the tempo or the chords. The downside to iReal Pro, and the reason why I don't use it, is the sound of the tracks, which are often less than inspiring. I talk about that in this video, and here's a short clip from that one to illustrate what I mean. The problem is, a lot of the tracks that I hear students using are nearly devoid of what you hear coming from a good rhythm section, which is to say the inspiration and the ideas that stimulate your own creativity. Here's an example. This is a track I found on YouTube. Now compare it to this one, based on the same tune. That sounds like real musicians, because it is real musicians. That's from a Jamie Aebersold volume titled Jam Session, and the rhythm section is comprised of Hal Galper, Steve Gilmore, and Bill Goodwin. The thing that I most object to with computer-generated play-along tracks is that they discourage you from actively listening. With any play-along, it's a one-way street. They can't hear you or respond to you, but you can and you should still try to listen and respond to them. Now, that's much more rewarding when you're listening to actual musicians rather than a digital recreation. Enter the QUARTET app. QUARTET melds the musical qualities of a recorded play-along with the flexibility of an app. There are currently 4 volumes of QUARTET, with 2 more on the way. Each app offers a different selection of tunes, totaling 500. There's a reason why new collections of tunes are released in a separate app, and I'll explain that as we go. The tracks are actual recordings of musicians playing in real time, including a piano trio and a soloist, which could be a trumpet or woodwind or guitar. The UK musicians who recorded the tunes are listed on each track, which gives credit where it's due, and it reinforces the fact that you are listening to real musicians. Here's a sample. inclusion of a soloist is a unique feature that offers opportunities for transcription, or just as an example of what it sounds like to solo on a specific tune. This is Dave O'Higgins on saxophone. You can choose to listen from a bunch of different mixes, with or without the soloist, and in various combinations of rhythm section players in trios and duos. For me, this is a great feature because I love playing without drums or without a harmonic instrument. Each track can be transposed up or down 8 semitones, and the tempo can be varied by 75% in either direction. Altering a recording to these extreme degrees does sound unnatural, and the tracks sound best at the original pitch and speed, but within reasonable limits, it's perfectly acceptable. Here's 3 examples of the same track. First transposed down a minor third and slowed down 20 beats per minute, then at the recorded key and tempo of F major and 150 beats per minute, and then transposed up a minor third and sped up 20 beats per minute. The technology to change the pitch or the tempo of a track or to isolate specific instruments has been around for a while, for example on an app called Transcribe Plus. But to use that app, you have to have the tracks to begin with. Plus, the isolation feature is not perfect. There can be artifacts of the tracks that you've removed. On Quartet, when you take an instrument out of the mix, there is no trace of it. So the unique aspect of Quartet is to take that capability and combine it with an extensive collection of recorded tracks, all with a technological structure and a user interface that is specifically designed for play-alongs. It's really raised the bar for jazz improvisers. Each tune begins with an intro that is very much like you would hear on a gig. You can choose whether to have a count-off or not, but to my mind there's no need, because as a soloist, it feels much more natural to begin with an introduction from the rhythm section rather than a count-off from a cowbell or Jamie Aebersold's famous monotone voice.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
The track can be set to repeat as many times as you want, but only the second chorus will repeat. Now this can start to sound repetitive, and Aebersold has the edge, with each track being a distinct performance from start to end. Still, given the number of tracks that they've released over a relatively short period of time, it would be a lot to ask the quartet musicians to play, and for the company to pay them to play 5 or 6 choruses on each tune. To keep it sounding a little bit more fresh, my solution is to change the key and the tempo every chorus. Even changing the tempo by 1 or 2 beats per minute requires a subtle adjustment to your time feel. Some of the tracks even replicate famous performances of a tune, like this version of Autumn Leaves, as played by Miles Davis on Cannonball Adderley's album Something Else. Now, in contrast to the intros, which are really excellent, the endings are pretty abrupt, usually just landing on the tonic chord. Now, that one's not terrible, and honestly, some of them sound worse than that, but it's not reflective of how musicians would actually end a tune. And along the same lines, we don't hear a turnaround at the end of a chorus like we'd normally expect. As it was explained to me, this app already requires a lot of processing power, so every additional feature has to be weighed against the cost and the complexity. This is also the reason why at present, QUARTET can only be installed on iOS devices like an iPhone or an iPad, although it will play on a Silicon M series Mac computer. The company actually had to suspend sales of an Android version because the number of different devices made it impossible to include the full set of features. Additional features include favorites and playlists and the ability to loop sections of a track or start anywhere from within the track, for example, if you wanted to skip the introduction. It would be handy to have a way to see tracks that you've recently played. You can choose to display the chords in concert, B-flat, or E-flat pitch. I'm on the fence regarding the way that the chords are displayed, highlighting each beat of each bar. I think it would be less visually distracting to just highlight each chord as it occurs. But it is easy to glance at it and know exactly where you are, and it's arguably easier to see than iReal Pro, which crams all the chords onto an iPhone screen. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people use iReal Pro as a pocket-sized chord fakebook. You can't do that with QUARTET. However, given the affordable price points, for most people, it won't really be a decision whether to own one or the other. You can also choose to display the chords as basic voicings for piano or guitar or ukulele. As a horn player, that's not relevant to me, so I didn't spend any time with that feature, but it might be helpful for people who are learning to play those instruments. A couple of my testers commented that it would be nice to see or hear the melodies for the tunes. Now, that would indeed be nice, because if you're improvising on a tune for which you don't know the melody, you're deprived of arguably the most powerful resource for an improviser. This is another area in which Aebersold is the clear winner, because the books include the melody and the lyrics, which are also important to know. But this comes at a price. When you reproduce the melody or play it, you're into the realm of copyright. On this channel, I have to be careful not to play much of the melody of any tune because I'll get a copyright claim on the video. On QUARTET, you'll notice that all the titles are listed as in the style of. So yes, you'll have to look somewhere else to learn the melodies, either from fake books or better yet, by listening to recordings. But that will be time well spent. All of my testers wondered about the seeming illogic of packaging additional tune collections in a separate app. And it is a quirky way to go about it, but I don't find it to be that big a deal, because when you click on search in any of the apps, you'll see all of the tunes in a single list, and when you choose one, it launches the corresponding app. And by the way, you can search not only by title, but also by composer, style, tempo, or hashtag keywords which are listed for each track. So for example, you can pull up tunes from the 1930s, which is pretty cool. Preferences like transposition and count-off can be set globally, and playlists sync across the multiple apps on a single device. So it works very much the same as if it was a single app, with the only minor inconvenience being that you can wind up with a bunch of windows open on your desktop. The company says that this is basically a marketing decision, that experience has shown them that they do much better when they release a new app rather than a new bundle of tunes. I liken it to recording an album. You'll get more buzz by releasing a new album rather than adding tunes to an older one. Think about the 133 Aebersold volumes, released over the course of a half-century, with about 10 to 20 tracks per album. It's obvious to me that an app like this is going to be expensive to produce, especially when you have to physically record each new track. So if doing it this way helps the company stay afloat and bring out new product, well, I'm good with that. There are a few other things to note. Once you download the app, you can install it on as many devices as you want, including an M-series Mac. The only restriction is that all the devices have to use the same Apple ID. I think iReal Pro makes you purchase the desktop app separately. The tracks can be exported with any of the changes to instrumentation, key, or tempo, and all exported tracks are royalty-free. I'm going to make good use of that on this channel. If you want to remix the tracks or isolate them down to a single instrument, for $1, you can download any track as individual WAV files already set up as a GarageBand project. I have encountered a few small glitches. They're all minor, and they may relate to the fact that I'm mostly using the app on my M1 and M3 MacBooks when it's really designed for iOS phones and tablets. Sometimes, when I click on a tune from the search field, it launches the app, but it doesn't go directly to the tune. Occasionally, I have to relaunch the app to download additional mixes of a tune, as I've done for this video. I've noticed at least one instance in which the chords on screen don't precisely match what I'm hearing being played, but that seems to be an outlier. The chord symbols are generally good, with enough extensions to accurately communicate the harmony without cluttering the screen up with too much information. One tester pointed out that transposed chords sometimes appear on the screen enharmonically mixed up, but that's a common issue with any transposing software. As I say, these are minor concerns amidst the big picture of how much this app delivers for relatively little money. So my advice to you is, if you use play-alongs, don't give it a second thought. Just get Quartet. You won't regret it. Before I play along with one of the tracks, let me say again that I'm not paid to make this video. I don't have sponsors, and I don't do paid courses or memberships. All the content that I post about jazz improvisation and brass playing and other aspects of being a musician is completely free. To the extent that I derive any revenue from this channel, it comes mostly from book sales and online lessons for people who really want to improve their musical knowledge and ability. You can find out more at chasesanborn.com. What I look for in a play-along track is the same thing I look for in a live rhythm section. A sound that makes me want to join in, that draws me out of my own head and into the musical collective that is at the heart of jazz improvisation. And we hear that sound in this swinging track from Quartet 3 based on the tune Shiny Stockings. As you listen, please take a second to click the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content related to jazz improvisation.